The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Now broadcasting from the Right to Offend Media Studios in sunny South Florida, bringing you the latest in politics, current events, art, and pop culture. This is the Whitfield Report Live with Sam Whitfield.
But giving offense is good. In fact, it's essential.
And hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's Monday edition of the Whitfield Report. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, and joining me today, once again, is Henry Brown, a thriller pulp author. And last time we were here, Henry and I discussed a little bit about his comic Threat Quotient, which he was still developing last time he came on the program. But now, as of the recording of this podcast, he's actually getting ready to crowdfund for that comic book. And so I've had a few other indie comic book authors on, and a couple other authors who have done crowdfunding. So I'm very curious about kind of, what he's found out about that. So welcome once again, Henry Brown, to the program. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Sam.
Not a problem. So, just to kind of refresh the audience in general, what is Threat Quotient about? And, what can you tell us about it?
Well, I can tell you it's a 108-page graphic novel, full color. It's a ensemble superhero epic would be a good way to describe it. And it is, I think this might have been true last time too, but I have all the art for it. I'm just stuck in the process of coloring, which is a lot more time consuming than I ever would have guessed.
Yeah.
But that's about the coloring and lettering and shading and all that stuff is about 70 to 75% done. So I think I'll be able to finish it in maybe this summer. I hope this summer, and it'll be ready to go to the printer, God willing.
So just to kind of, recap. So you started out writing pulp, novellas, much like myself and other people we associate with in the indie author community. But then you've also been working on Threat Quotient for a while, and you've done everything more or less by yourself, if I understand.
Well, except I did not do the illustrating on the interior pages. I did some tuning up of the line art, but I commissioned a comic artist to do that. So, and I could not have done it without him. Aside from that, though, I have been pretty much a one-man act since my second or third novel, probably. I do everything, including the editing and the formatting and the publishing and all that.
Yeah. And I know about the, formatting and editing for books because I do much the same thing. But I know for comic books, it's a completely different ball game.
Yeah.
Not necessarily as far as like what you have to do, but the process is much more complex.
It's collaborative by nature, unless you happen to also be an illustrator, which I did draw when I was very young, but I quit. I never got as good as the guys who do it professionally.
Right.
And I quit doing it. I kind of lost that. I never developed to the point where I would have needed to be doing it all myself. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I used to kind of write superhero stories myself, and I'd attempted to kind of do artwork on my own, but I just never had that really artistic flair, like beyond sketching out maybe a few stick figures. And then when I was around, I think I was 12 at the time, I read Stanley's autobiography,
Oh, right.
Excelsior,
Excelsior, yeah. I
and
have it on my shelf back there somewhere.
yeah, same here. I've still got my copy that's more than a couple years old now. But I remember reading, that and then realizing, oh, he's more of a writer and other people do the art, and well, writing is more of what I want to do. So
Right.
that's when I kind of shifted into I guess focusing on writing more or less. So uh
Yeah, with me, when you ask me, or when you say I started out doing pulp, it all depends on when you consider the start. Because when I started writing professionally, yeah, it was pulp and it was prose. But I started out drawing when I was younger, and of course, I always had a penchant for superheroes. And over time, the adults in my life would tell me, well, if you really want to be, a serious creator, you need to write prose. If you ever want to make money at it, if you ever want to be taken seriously, you got to do that. So I kind of started writing as an adjunct of drawing because I wanted to make my own comic books. And my first comics I made, with whatever paper I could find laying around, whatever pencil I could find laying around, and I stapled it together. It's as pathetic as you would imagine it was. But I found that writing was more of a challenge. So I drifted more and more, like into my teen years, I started drifting more and more into prose without illustration. And eventually just the writing took over completely. And now it's like the shoes on the other foot. Drawing is a much bigger challenge, but I don't have the patience for it that I had then, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I actually have a friend, Joe Fisher. He does a comic called oh, I'm blank. I just had him on too, so that's bad. But anyway, he does all of his own illustrations as well. So he's a natural artist, but then he also kind of has the reverse problem of you know writing is more of a struggle for him.
Oh, okay.
But
Okay.
I guess it's like one of those things where if you're good at writing, drawing is kind of a deficiency for you, and then vice versa, it seems like.
Typically, it's hard to find a double threat, but there are some out there, you
Yeah.
know. And absolutely, when you do write it for comics, it's a different, as I'm sure you know, completely different type of writing than with prose. Similar to screenwriting, but it has its differences too. The medium doesn't fit perfectly with movies.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a different way to do it.
Yeah, there actually, it's funny you mention that because I have like somewhere on my computer here I do have like a graphic novel uh script that I, put together like a long, time ago just to see if I could do it. And the thing with it is it's hard because there are a million different like applications for writing screenplays. You have
Mm,
Final Draft, you have Celtics, there are even modules like in Microsoft Word that you can, do if you want to cough the money up for that. But there's nothing really dedicated, I guess, for comic book writing, which is interesting because you would think
not that
that
I know of, yeah.
yeah, you would think that now in 2026, someone would have at least come up with something for dedicated comic book writers, but I guess not.
I didn't even know that about the screenwriting, because back in the day when I would do it, I don't even know if you can do this in Word anymore, but I would create my own macros for the formatting, and then I would use those macros as I wrote. Because you got, yeah.
Yeah, you can still do that. I mean, I don't pay for. I use OpenOffice, so you can still do that. It just takes a little bit more setup. So, um, so what made you decide to dive into the superhero genre for Threat Quotient? Because now everyone's talking how, there's an oversaturation in
Yeah.
the superhero comic book.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been accused of having good timing. So
None of us have.
yeah. Superheroes are kind of what got me into reading in the first place. Not kind of, they were. They definitely were. I don't know if I would have become such a voracious reader if I had not discovered comic books. And so that's what ignited my love of reading. And actually, I don't know how down in the weeds you want me to get into this, but I was reading. In fact, I still, it's not the same one, but it's the same issue. I have a big, huge tabloid size reprint of some Tarzan stories in one of those DC first editions, first editions, I think. And I was living in a pretty remote area, didn't have any much to do, so I wound up reading the same thing over and over again a lot. And I was reading this for the third or fourth time, and I decided to read this section in the back. And it was talking about a book, a prose book that came out, I can't remember. At the time, I was under the impression it was nonfiction. But it was an anthology of stories about humans who were raised by wild animals. And of course, that's why it was in the back of a Tarzan comic reprint.
Right.
And it was called Mother Was a Lovely Beast, or My Mother Was a Lovely Beast. And it was by Philip Jose Farmer. And just from reading that little segment about it, I was like, man, I want to read that. And so I asked my mother, if next time she went to town, she would pick it up for me, because she liked books too, so she might go to the bookstore. And when she came back, she had a bag, and it had the bookstore's logo printed on it, and I could see there was a book in it, so I got real excited. And when she pulled it out, it was a Hardy Boys book. And I was like, so what happened was she had talked to a lady that worked at the store and asked if the book I wanted to read was appropriate for someone of my age. And I was 9 years old at the time. And the bookstore clerk said, no, absolutely not. So she brought home the Hardy Boys instead. And I read that. And after that, I started reading a lot of prose books after that. But superheroes I never completely gave up on them. It's a form of, well, you and I like and appreciate pulp. And pulp is a form of,
right.
It's a form of wish fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
And wish fulfillment, mixed up with escapism and all that. Well, superhero comics are that on steroids. Even long after I was supposed to outgrow that stuff, I still really liked it.
Same.
Yeah, okay, cool. I got disgusted, like in the 90s, with what Marvel and DC were doing to characters that I actually liked. And so I gave up on, I haven't bought a Marvel or DC title for, I don't know, 20, 30 years. But I still always appreciated the medium and different genres within the medium. And I still, from the time I was young, so this is how, I think one of the reasons I became so creative is because I was often left by myself when I was a child and didn't really have anything to do. I came up with ways to entertain myself. And one of the ways I did was, like I mentioned, making my own comics or writing my own stories or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I created some superheroes back, when I was very young. And a lot of them were stupid, derivative and pastiche or whatever. But some of them I hung on to, at least part of them. And some of them I hung on to nothing but the name, but I kept the name. And I kept, over the years, even when I never thought I'd be making a comic of my own one day, I still, when I was bored, when I was driving a long distance or doing something really mundane at work, these old ideas would come up and I'd refresh and refurbish them and revamp them you know, it would be better. You know, it would be really cool is if I did this with that character and if I told this kind of story. So that's kind of how I kept it alive all this time. And lo and behold, now I'm at the point where I've made one and hopefully people are going to read it and love it.
It's really interesting that you bring up that you lost interest in Marvel and DC in the 90s, because that's more or less when I, kind of got into comics, was the 90s and 2000s. Of course, that's also kind of the time period that I grew up, but into. But I became a really hardcore comic book fan. I'd go to the local comic book store every weekend with my folks, and even after my parents got divorced, whichever one was with me, we would still go like every
Nice.
weekend. So
Yeah.
so that was good. And then really it wasn't until I was into high school, like around like the early 20s, when I lost interest in Marvel, and it was partially because they had started doing all these, instead of doing like one special event, thing like per year like they used to do, it would be a special event like basically every 6 months, which meant like that the entire thing was a special event.
Right.
And it became a thing of like I couldn't keep up with it, with all these different series and school and Boy Scouts. And so I just kind of lost interest in the newer stuff. And then once I was in college, forget about that, because that's when comics happened and
Right.
all
Yeah.
that. That's when I got more into like pulp and the old James Bond novels and whatnot. But
I know
yeah,
I was kind of ahead of the power curve there because most people didn't give up on comics. I mean, there's some that still read it, but most people didn't give up on them until the early aughts through the 20 teens. And they got sick of, for several reasons. The ones that you cited with the constant gimmicks and the crossovers and the reboots and the retcons and also the woke garbage. But it was,
yeah,
for me, it was mostly the cultural Marxism
yeah,
and there was some things that had no political implications, I guess, that I got pissed off about. Like in the mid to late 80s, and probably started before that, but in the mid to late 80s, they turned Spider-Man into a real wimp. I thought he was, and I didn't like that.
yeah,
I don't really like, I understand, like, especially in the boomers were really into postmodernism, giving the hero a bunch of faults and giving the villain, sorry, the villain a bunch of virtues, where it kind of muddied it up and could
yeah,
make you argue who's really the hero and really the villain there. Which I kind of riff off that in a way in Threat Quotient, because I doesn't these characters' attitude is much like what you encounter in real life. In real life, nobody sees themselves as the villain of the story.
right,
They all see themselves as, whether they're telling their own life story or they're telling you some anecdote about something that just happened, they're either the victim or the hero of their own narrative, right? And so I don't have any super villains per se. All of them are considered superheroes, but they're ideologically opposed, and both sides either think that they're on the correct side of history, or they at least think the other side is dead wrong.
right.
Yeah.
That seems to. I mean, that's incredibly relevant to today's time too,
Ain't it
because
though?
that's I know it's kind of passe to say this now, but like art mimics life. And I mean I guess that's always been true to a certain extent of of humanity, but like especially now you've got one side that thinks that they're righteous, and then just because just because you disagree with them, I mean the left especially
It's
kind of
perfectly
they
it's perfectly acceptable to assassinate you if you disagree with them on something.
To literally murder you if
Yeah.
if you disagree with them. And it's interesting you mentioned deconstructing thing, because I love Watchmen as a graphic novel, but I've reread that a few times, and it's like, oh yeah, well, Alan Moore was definitely one of those nihilist,
Yeah.
deconstructive, postmodernist boomers.
Definitely deconstructionists. And yet, well, so Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, I appreciate both of them as stories. I thought they were very interesting stories, but at the same time, the messages that they were pushing annoyed me and still annoys me to this day. And I think by this time, most people understand what Alan Moore is all about. Yeah, and deconstructionist, it was a successful gimmick for a while, and like everybody tried to copy that, especially Watchmen. And now it's like it's so old and it's so tiresome
Yeah.
that I think it's well past time to move beyond that. They played that one out until it's completely spent.
Yeah,
At
well,
least in my opinion.
Yeah, well, it's like anything. Like anything, you can do something well for a while, but if you run something into the ground, it's not going to be appealing anymore.
And I like to say that the Threat Quotient is not your typical Cape comic. It's not. I dare say that it's like no comic anyone's read before. But it's not because I'm deconstructing or anything like that. I do introduce elements of verisimilitude in there that I don't really see from anyone else, really. And again, I haven't regularly read comics aside from the ones I already had in my collection. I have not done that since the 90s. So there could be a lot of stuff that I'm missing. Maybe there has been something like this before. I'm not sure, but at the same time, I try to same thing kind of in my fiction. I like an exciting story with action, with adventure, but I do try to keep it grounded in reality.
Yeah.
I mean, with superheroes, how grounded in reality can you be? Actually, but I do try.
Yeah, I get what you mean by that.
Yeah. But anyway, it's it's definitely not left wing, and it's not even. Well, here's the thing. It's got some observations in it that we see in real life. And so some people consider that political. And I can see why they would, because I'm making observations that no one else dares make. Certainly no one in the mainstream. Also people who are, the I just want good comics crowd. But it is reality, and I don't, it's not a right-wing polemic or anything, and it's not, I don't do what Marvel and DC are apparently doing, where I have, characters stop in the middle of the story and lecture the reader about what they should believe. I don't do any of that. But I do try to, it's in an alternate reality, but it's very similar to the world we lived in during the COVID lockdowns. And you probably remember some of the insanity that was happening then.
Oh yeah. I got banned off YouTube during that whole period of time.
Well, that's right. I think you mentioned that before. Yeah.
And I'm actually, this will be on YouTube because they gave me my channel back. Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people who got deplatformed, not necessarily even because I was anti-vax, but because I was like, pro, individual choice, basically.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was so bad then. I think that was the peak of cancel culture. It was so bad then you didn't actually have to say anything opposing the, what would you call it? The dominant ideology. All you had to do is not agree strongly enough, and you'd be put on Santa's bad list and possibly canceled. There were a lot of leftists who were canceled just because, well, I mean, look at what they did to, what's her face, the Harry Potter author.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling.
Rowling, yeah. So a lot of people like that got on the naughty list, and they believed they were in agreement with the woke mob, like 80% of what they espoused.
Yeah, well, there was that there was also there was also that loudmouth comedian from New York. I can't remember his name off the top. Oh, Michael Rappaport.
Oh, he's a stand-up comic?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know
Well,
he's
I
an
mean,
actor because I've seen him in some movies.
yeah. So I mean, I mean, I think he's done a variety of things. I mean, so he used to be like, full on, anti-Trump and, really kind of obnoxious. But then when October 7th happened, him being Jewish, he took like a very pro-Israel stance, and all of a sudden the far left wanted to kill him because he believed in, he doesn't want innocents being, killed, but obviously, he wants, America and Israel to take out the terrorists, and that's too much for, people. It's been funny because he's
Yeah.
slowly been getting red pilled, on stuff. Maybe Trump's not as bad as he thought.
Well, some other
It's
ones
been
too, like Bill Maher or Maher or however you pronounce it. Of
yeah.
course, he's still a lefty, but he's surprisingly come to his senses on some issues, or at least it seems that way. I don't watch him regularly, but just I read stuff that he says, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned Bill Maher because I on my segment on my show when I first, I've been doing this for almost 20 years now. And when I started podcasting, like I used to have a segment where I would, you know, criticize or debunk a lot of Bill Maher's left-wing things, but over the years as the left has gone more left and more woke, he actually sounds more like Rush Limbaugh now than than any like left wing commentator out there. And I actually, to your point about making observations in fiction, I actually made a character that was based off him for American Inferno, who's he considers himself an old school liberal in my
Yeah,
story, but he's not he's not for cancel culture or for his political opponents getting assassinated.
yeah.
So it's really interesting.
Well,
So
technically, if you look at the labels that we use now, if you look at what the words actually mean, technically I'm a liberal because
yeah,
for a lot of reasons. I believe a man is innocent until proven guilty. I believe that the law should apply equally to everybody. I believe that you should judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. I believe that if you're not hurting anyone else, then what you do is your own business.
yeah,
You know, well, and I should probably be careful about saying that because some people can take that to mean what I don't mean by it. But in other words, I believe people should be able to speak or print or publish what they want, even if their opinion is offensive
yeah,
to people. So those are all, by the way, our Constitution is very, very liberal, even radical document. Nobody in the world had ever deemed to follow a system like that before. So the founders were actually liberal, and in that sense, I'm liberal as well.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, so am I, and I mean, the name of the podcast network I'm on is, Right to Offend Media. You know,
Nice.
we actually, we encourage people even who disagree with us to come on and, debate things and, whatnot. Like I've had a few liberals who, they may disagree with me on some things like regarding, gay marriage, but it's amazing because 90 on the important stuff, we mostly agree, that like cancel culture is bad and big tech censorship is
Yeah.
bad. Um,
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
but getting back to threat quotient, so you mentioned last time you were here that you were starting a Kickstarter. for this project. Uh, what has that process been like for you? I know that's one of the things you wanted to promote here.
Been very educational. Well, it's been at times frustrating, at times terrifying. And it's still terrifying because the Kickstarter launches tomorrow morning, and I have no idea this is my first one, and I understand most of them fail, blah, blah, blah. And I don't have a big enough email list. That's something I did not take seriously enough for most of my writing career. And on it goes. But I did do my best to educate myself. So in all the months after endless months that I was coloring the panels and shading them, cleaning up the line art first, and then lettering and so forth, I was listening to podcasts from people who knew something about the industry. And actually, the very reason I'm on Patreon in the first place was I did that to pay for some special extra content from some people and I did that because they had done many successful Kickstarters before, and I bought a book on it. So I've been learning everything I can, and there's still so much I don't know. I just found out within the last few days that I had done some stuff wrong. And one of the big mistakes I almost made was I assumed because I chose the starting date and starting time that it was just going to automatically go live at that time. And I found out, thank God, that no, that's not how it works. You have to go on there and manually choose it's ready to go and now start it, which I'll be doing tomorrow morning.
Interesting.
That's my plan. Yeah. A lot of stuff too, like there's a pre-launch page, which if you have time during this podcast, I'll share my screen and let's see what that looks like. And it's not exactly the same as the normal page you're going to see once it goes live. And on the one that people will see tomorrow, there's a video embedded in it, so they can watch one of my trailers for the comic. And I don't know, I could go on for quite a while about the stuff I don't know, but this is obviously going to be a learning experience, and I'll be, whether it succeeds or fails, I should have a better idea how to strategize for the next one.
Well, you know more than I do when it comes to Kickstarters. So I guess, a question I would ask, and a lot of people would ask too, is, you do a lot of this, you're doing a lot of this as a one-man show. So what exactly would the Kickstarter be helping to cover or pay for, I guess?
Okay, so primarily it's to reimburse me for the money I spent on the art, right? As far as page rates go now, I got a really reasonable rate, but it's still, when you add it all together for a 108-page graphic novel, it hurt. It hurt scraping together the money. I had to make some sacrifices on other stuff to put that together. And so it would reimburse me for that. And it would also pay for the shipping to the backers. So there's a lot I didn't know about crowdfunding, and it might be worthwhile me getting into that in a minute.
Sure.
Things I've learned, but so it would help pay for the shipping and the printing. So printing is not cheap, and it's getting more expensive all the time. So I have to pay for those. I have to pay for the shipping, all the little extras I put into it. And I had to commission cover artists for the alternate covers. So all that costs money, and different marketing stuff I've done costs money. And hopefully, God willing, the Kickstarter will reimburse me for everything I've already spent. It'll pay for the shipping and the printing, and maybe have me a little bit left over afterwards as profit that I can use to start the next graphic novel in the series.
That would be amazing. And yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think people necessarily realize, too, with indie comic books, it's a bit different, because I know that, like, for self-publishing, just standard books, as you and I have both done, it's still a process and it still takes work.
Yeah.
But the one nice thing is, with Amazon and a couple of the other services, you can basically do print on demand.
Right.
Now where
it doesn't cost you anything.
Right.
Yeah.
They just take a percentage or or whatever. And as far as I'm aware, because I did look into this probably like, 5 or 6 years ago, there's nothing quite, there's nothing similar for print comic books.
No, no. So I had no idea how difficult it is, how time consuming it is, how expensive it is. It's really, really hard in this business. And it's something, well, of course, we already know this for writing. Like if almost everybody and their mother is becoming an author now, but it's a career path I would advise people strongly against it, and unless they have an inner compulsion that just cannot be denied, because chances are you're not going to get rich on it. Not only that, you're probably not going to even make enough to support yourself on it.
Right.
So don't do it unless you have a passion for it. And I would multiply that by a factor of probably 8 with comic books. So it's a really risky endeavor. Chances are you're not going to make any money back, knock on wood. If you're compelled to do it, if you have a real passion for it and you can't cut that passion off, that is probably a legit reason to do it. And you still probably lose money.
Yeah.
And you'll sacrifice a lot of time and everything else. And I think some people are going to learn that the hard way.
Yeah. Well, even now, like writing professionally for business, which is what I got my degree in technical writing.
Okay.
Even that now, though, with AI and everything, and marketing firms, moving more towards the digital side. There's not. I wouldn't say there isn't a demand, but the demands are changing a bit. So it's not as lucrative as it was, like, even COVID really kind of changed everything with that
but it was
too.
It was already on a trend line that's not great for us, because there's more and more authors all the time. I'm not even talking about AI slop. There's more and more authors all the time, and there's less and less readers all the time. There's less literate people. There's less people willing to sit down and read a book as opposed to playing a video game or just scrolling on social media.
Yeah.
The younger generations coming out are functionally illiterate for the most part. Some exceptions, and I know a few, so I know they're out there, but for the most part, they're like, the last thing they're ever going to do is open a book and read it without somebody pointing a gun to their head.
Yeah, well, and that's a real shame.
Yeah.
And also, though, I think that's where, like, for me, similar to you, I got into reading because of, comic books as well. And, back when I was a kid, comic books were still not considered literature, or anything like that. I'm told now by a few of my friends who have become teachers that has started to change a bit, which is good. I guess teachers are more open-minded than they were when even I was a kid, which is good, but still, like the reading rates are not that great. I mean, I have trouble, trying to convince just my, friends outside the author community to buy my books.
I know. Yeah.
Or some of them will, a lot of them will buy them, but they won't read them. So,
yeah, I've had a few friends and some family members who bought, like, my debut novel, and I think that's about it, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions. So they are not my audience by any stretch. I know exactly where you're coming from there.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the, I appreciate the support, and I appreciate that a lot of them have bought my books. That always helps. But I would love people's feedback. What they actually think of them.
You want readers who are reading it of their own volition and who enjoy it and want more of it. It's just
Yeah.
Well, comic books specifically, even by the time I came along and started reading them, there was still this prejudice that they're for kids. It's all kids stuff.
Right.
But that was changing, or arguably had already changed by the time I started reading them. they were still kid friendly enough where kids could get into them and pick up on it and follow the action and learn the lore and the world building and all that on the
Yeah.
fly. But this perception that it was, because when comics started out, it was really, they were geared toward adolescent boys.
Yeah.
That changed with the boomers. And so by the time I came along, that had pretty much changed. And I'm not saying that the writing was flawless back then, because I go back and read some of the ones that I really loved, and I'm like, man, their storytelling skills weren't quite as, as deft as I remembered them being.
Yeah.
But they were starting to incorporate adult themes. By adult, I mean, like, well, of course, a lot of it was about relationships. And then you had like the saga where Tony Stark became an alcoholic, and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It wasn't to the extreme that it is now, where like everybody's got to be homosexual, and everyone who doesn't believe a certain thing is a white supremacist. It wasn't that bad yet, but you could see the seeds of some of that starting, like, even in the 80s.
Yeah, no. And you just mentioned the demon in the bottle,
Yeah.
storyline. It's funny because I read that when I was a kid, and by then alcoholism it wasn't as much of a taboo. But I read like an article, or something, I think it was on Substacks somewhere, where someone recounted that they read Demon in the Bottle as a kid when it first came out, and then they realized that their dad was an alcoholic or something. So it was one of those things where, like, yeah, back then comics were also, they were dealing in heavier themes,
Yeah.
but they were helping kids explore like more mature themes without going overboard.
Yeah.
And I feel like when the medium does that, that's when it's at its best, to kind of explore complex topics without ramming things in people's faces.
I think earlier than that, preceding Demon in a Bottle by, I don't know, maybe a decade even. I don't know for sure, because I never really read Teen Titans. But Speedy, who was Green Arrow's sidekick, he became a drug addict in one of those. So there.
Yeah, I think I remember reading something like that.
And there was like the whole mutant thing that I guess started in the late 70s and through the 80s. You saw these little scenes where a superhero is trying to get from one place to another, and they run into this big protest against mutants, or demonstration against mutants. I think at first that started out as a civil rights metaphor. So it was trying to show the irrational hatred that some people had toward others based on, genetics. And eventually that got out of control, or that went somewhere where it didn't really need to go, in my opinion. But yeah, those were, so I guess they were seeking relevancy for quite a while. And then, yeah, but to my original point though, they weren't really just for kids anymore. And of course now, like, they really committed suicide because they started telling so-called stories that do not appeal to kids at all. And they shut down the distribution to newsstands and drugstores and grocery stores. I found my first comic in a grocery store, I believe. But
yeah,
you have to go to a specialty shop to get them now. And like, no kid, who's too young to drive yet is going to find some specialty shop and say, hey, I think I'll check that out. I'll check out this strange store with all these adults in it and see if they have something there I can get hooked on. It just doesn't happen. Unless an adult takes them there, they're not going to discover the medium. And so when the existing audiences age out, there's nothing to replace them.
Yeah, no, when I was a kid, they didn't have comics in the grocery stores as much, like, minus a few exceptions. But when I was a kid, in fact, I think it was Terrence and I from the Men's Adventure Fiction Discord and I were talking about this. They used to sell action figures and have like comic books included with with the action
Well, I think I
figures.
remember that. Yeah. I
So
think I
that
remember seeing that.
that's how like a lot of, people of my generation got into comic books at first. And also reading the newspaper comic strips, which still had a few of them. But now, yeah, it's like even trying to find comic book stores in my area are tough now, just because there's not a demand. And like, I'm into comic books, but I'm not really into D&D or any of these other
Me neither. Yeah.
hobby shops, but they're getting lumped in with that too.
Right. And manga, or manga, however you pronounce it, is like taking over these comic book shops because it sells, whereas the big two are not selling very good, as I understand it. I mean, there's people that will argue
Yeah.
with you about that, but the manga, and I've read a couple, and it's what I read wasn't really my cup of tea, but they do tell a story that I think that scratches the itch, especially for young people, better than anything Marvel or DC is producing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really a manga guy either, but I did read a few of them. And let me say this, I definitely understand the appeal of, what they're going for. And it does kind of remind me of, I guess, like some of the writing of American comics from at least like the 80s and, in the 70s.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting.
So, at least, spiritually kind of in that vein, where they're not trying to shove propaganda,
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I agree.
down
Yeah,
your throat. So,
yeah.
um, and it's funny because you mentioned that they used to make comics exclusively for kids, and now it's almost like the reverse. Now they make some comics that are so, gruesome and brutal and
Yeah.
over the top that like they're not appropriate for kids at all. Like The Boys is probably the most prominent example
Now, have you
think
watched
of.
that?
Yeah, I watched the show, and then, well, I watched part of the show. I haven't seen all the seasons because it's gotten a little gratuitous even for me. And I'm not someone who shies away from blood or,
Yeah.
or nudity, but it's a little far even for me. But then the original comic book it's based on is like completely like, it makes Watchmen look like the Justice League,
I bet. I bet.
comics by comparison.
Yeah, when I first saw, and I didn't hear anything about the boys either, and I hadn't read the comic or knew it was a comic, but I saw it on, I guess, Netflix or maybe Prime.
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I tried to watch the first episode and I didn't even get through it. And I was like, man, I don't need this garbage rammed down my throat. Yeah. It's already being rammed down my throat everywhere I go. And whenever my wife watches one of her shows, it's like, it's in your face from the beginning. I don't need more of that. I'm not going to volunteer to put up with more of that. So once again, I gave up on it earlier than most people probably do.
Yeah, I mean, the first season was actually good, but then the rest of the show, the writers got like severe Trump derangement syndrome, and so everything bad became an allegory to Trump. And then in the later seasons, I'm they adapted like some of the more gratuitous things from the comics. So I kid you not, in the later seasons, they have like literal orgies that are like, and somehow it's approved on Amazon, and it makes 70s, porn look, decent by comparison.
Looked like a G-rated movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I didn't wait to see any of that. It was, but right from the very beginning, I could tell that they were like the male heroes were all either pathetic or weak or abusive, or there's like no redeeming qualities in them from what I could tell. And I see that everywhere. That's what
Yeah.
they're doing with every, like, and if a property already exists and some one of these people get a hold of that IP, they'll take it and pervert it so that it's that way, so that the men are all weak or abusive or both. And I'm sick of that. And that's one of the things. That's one reason why I like the old pulp and the old men's adventure fiction, and that's really what turned me off of it. I did watch a couple. I like held my nose and watched a couple seasons of Invincible. Don't plan on buying the comic ever, but I ran across a comment someone made today, which I thought was pretty astute. They said that the action in, have you watched Invincible?
Yeah, I watched the first season, which I actually thought was good, but I also like J.K. Simmons too, so that's
Okay.
why I watched it.
Well, the comment that was made today was that their action sequences in Invincible, they might have been talking about the comic and not the series, but I haven't read the comic. They said that they're really poorly done and not very satisfying, and they make up for the lack of excitement by using gratuitous violence and a lot of blood and gore.
Yeah.
And when I thought about it, I was like, you know what? They're right. They're right.
Yeah.
That's why I never really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, that's also, I mean, yeah, that is an issue, and it's also an issue with the boys too.
Okay.
Where things are just either like complete, gore fest or sex fest. And it's again, like, I'm not a prude by any means, but I don't need to see someone's, brainstem, splatter against a windshield or, something.
And I'm
like
the same
that.
way too. Like if there's a sex scene in a movie or even a couple or in a book, that usually won't stop me from reading the rest of it. And if it's a good book, I'll say so. If I review it, I'll say, hey, it's a good book, but you do have these kind of scenes in here. If that is going to ruin the experience for you, then I don't recommend it. Like when that's all they can do, or worse yet, frankly, and when I talked about how they're all about like demonizing masculinity, and like every male character's got to be either a monster or a weakling. That's the exception is if they're homosexual, then they can be, a moral, strong character. And I'm really sick of that. I've been sick of that for a while. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's the case also where like they even demonize, straight women now for that too. It's not enough, for a woman just to be straight. She has to be, a lesbian or, a queer, something.
Well, and
other.
Even the heterosexual characters in today's pop culture, they at least at the very minimum, they have to approve of homosexuality or they're a bad person. There was a movie, like just as an illustration, they become so predictable. There's a movie, it was supposed to be a murder mystery, and I forget the name of it. I forgot most about it. My wife and I decided to watch it one night. And like early on, like within the first 20 minutes, there was a character who used the word faggot to describe someone else. And I was like, oh my God, okay, he's the killer. Why am I going to watch the rest of this movie? Now I know that he's going to be the murderer. He's the most immoral person in the, as far as the filmmakers are concerned. So they're so predictable. You get that. And I guess I'm getting more and more cantankerous as I grow older. I'm less and less willing. I'm less and less patient to put up with that kind of stuff. It would not be so bad if you saw or heard an alternate opinion once in a while, or if most stuff was just apolitical or pretended to be apolitical, as it was in like the 70s and 80s and stuff. But now it's just they're beating you over the head with it, ramming it down your throat all the time. I've had enough.
I don't even think it's an age thing. Like for me, I'm only 31, and I was telling someone, it's not that life is too short; it's that life is too long. life is too long, and for me to be lectured constantly day in and day out about this, that, or the other
Yeah.
thing. And also, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm the best writer ever, but a lot of these shows now and movies, usually I can figure out the plot like 10 or 15 minutes in to something.
Yeah.
And if I, as just like an indie author, can do that, and uh I'm constantly like trying to figure out, well, how would I improve the show if my thing as just like an average Joe Blow is way better, then yeah, Hollywood has a
Yeah.
problem. So
That's the other thing too that I didn't really talk about so much, but at the same time that they're becoming more and more extreme about imposing their politics on, in their fiction and their comics and their movies, at the same time the talent is just dried up. They just, like, because people, artists, like, going way back, most of them have leaned to the left, but at least they could tell good stories. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore, at least in most situations. In most instances, it does not seem to be the case. They have no ability to tell a good story anymore, a lot of them. And that's, so when we're looking at the people who say, I just want good comics, for instance, they've got a point. I think there's more involved than that, but they've got a point. The writing today sucks on average, just from what little I still see.
well, yeah, and it seems like to me, I mean, I've been checked out of comics probably like contemporarily, at least, for probably like at least, let's see, I'm 31 now, so probably like I haven't picked up a new comic since I was like 19 or 20. So it's been like 11 or 12 years at this point. And like I'll read a lot of like old stuff that's been reprinted from like the 70s and 80s. But like as far as the newer, as far as like the stuff from the past 10 years onward go, it seems like all these companies care about are the movies now, and
Yeah.
they just half-ass,
Mm-hmm.
or not even half-ass, but less than that even on the actual comics. It's sad.
That's another sad factor of this, is that most of the people running in the comics industry now, they don't love the medium. They're not in it because they like it and they want to do it. They're in it because they see it as a springboard into Hollywood or something. Because basically DC and Marvel have become IP farms for Marvel.
Yeah.
And I'm not the first one to observe that. But when they're not even committed to, well, and obviously they have no respect for the IP that they've inherited. So you get a lot of, well, and that's the thing too. So another reason why crowdfunding is a godsend in a way and necessary is it's the only way right now that an independent creator can compete with the big two and the other and the smaller ones that are part of the mainstream comic industry. They can operate at a loss because they are mostly an IP farm. They're like owned by Warner Brothers or owned by Disney or Sony or something. And they can operate at a loss. They can print stuff in bulk to save on shipping. And the indie comic creators don't have that advantage. So we have to, and I know I started buying indie comics and indie graphic novels a few years ago when I was kind of doing my research on the industry. And they're expensive. I mean, you cannot get them for the same prices as what Marvel and DC can offer them for.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the big, we're not owned by a big conglomerate that can afford to lose money. We're not able to order these humongous print runs. I wish I could get enormous bulk discounts, but that depends on how many of you out there back it. So we have to offer what we sell at a higher price, which turns, everybody's all about getting stuff for cheap or for free now. And that makes it difficult as well, because we cannot operate at a loss. I'm not a millionaire who's just spending an inheritance doing this. I have to
Right.
actually be able to make sound business decisions. And part of that is offering it for a price where I can pay for the stuff that it requires to make it. Crowdfunding is a godsend in that way because it eliminates the middleman somewhat, and it allows you to get your, the product that, nobody in the mainstream would probably ever touch with a 10-foot pole. It allows you to get that straight in front of the audience that you're shooting for, or at least hopefully it will. And
Yeah.
they can decide whether this work should exist or not.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, crowdfunding crowdfunding when done properly can be immensely helpful for creatives and, authors who I've encountered. And the ones who do and have had success think it's, a really good thing. I wish it does seem like there have been a few grifters. I don't know any of them
More than a
personally,
few. Yeah, more than a few.
but there are definitely grifters out there who also sadly abuse, the Kickstarter thing. And that's always unfortunate because it poisons kind of the well for the rest of us who do want to put out
Right.
good good work, honestly and with integrity.
There's always a few jerks, or at least a few jerks, who ruin it for everyone else. That's definitely the case. I do want to mention this about crowdfunding because I was had some wrong ideas about it for a long time, and some of your audience may also. I had, before I even started chasing this dream of comics, when I was just a prose author, a friend of mine suggested, and this was shortly after I first ever heard about GoFundMe, and I knew somebody who used GoFundMe to finance something or other. They said, hey, you really need to check out this crowdfunding deal and consider it for your next book. And I poo-pooed it. I dismissed it out of hand in my ignorance because I assumed it was all about charity, because that's all I had seen with GoFundMe. It's just like, help me pay for my wedding, help me pay for these hospital bills, or whatever the case
Yeah.
was. We're doing this animal rescue thing, help us pay for that. It's like, I don't want people to buy my books out of sympathy or out of charity. I want them to buy them because they want to read them. And so
Yeah.
for, I don't know, 15 years or so, I just didn't even consider crowdfunding, not knowing that other authors were using this as a way to bypass the gatekeepers and build up a big loyal following. And then, like, there was an alternative that wasn't, as as entrenched in cancel culture, called Give, Send, Go. But that also is mostly a charitable thing. So when I heard about comic creators using crowdfunding, I was like, why would you do it that way? And I didn't even consider that. What I found out was that there is that kind of crowdfunding. There is charitable crowdfunding. That still exists and people still do that. But platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and Fund My Comic are not charitable. What you do is you pledge an amount, and you can make a pledge where you don't get any reward, but for the most part, you choose a reward and you pledge the amount that reward is worth, if you follow me. And then
Yeah.
if the crowdfund is successful, then the creator gives you that reward, whether it's like the standard issue or a deluxe edition, or something with a fancy cover, with a foil cover, or whatever. It's bundled with a poster. Those are the different reward tiers that you can choose from. And it's not charitable. You actually are getting a product when you do it, and you're helping people like me, for instance, like get their feet off the ground, or bring the dream to life, push it over the finish line. So I'm saying that not because I want to insult anybody's intelligence, but because I didn't understand this for the longest time.
No, and I think that I was in a similar boat to you where, I thought that a lot of the, crowdfunding things were just for charity. And, some of them were charities and they were for people who I knew. So I actually, I've pitched in a few books on, a few bucks for those on occasion. But yeah, I had the same hesitancy because I don't want people to, buy my books, or anything out of pity or, anything like that. I want them to
Right.
buy them, because they genuinely enjoy what I'm putting out. So yeah, I'm glad that they're more creator based, I guess, platforms like that. Wish the one thing that I do wish that, there was more of a space for is like on Instagram, in Facebook, like I've noticed that, indie creators, they don't seem to get like a lot of traffic unless they're paying to boost posts,
Yeah.
which is, quite honestly a shame because word of
Yeah.
mouth used to count for a lot. So
Well, and I think social media is pretty much useless for marketing at this point in history. I think when it was new, if you knew how to work the system, you could succeed at marketing on whatever social media platform. But really, I think and social media itself is rigged too. There's with the shadow banning and the deboosting and all that stuff. But even that aside, it's just, and you know what? Substack was, from everything I read and hear from other people, it was pretty good before I got on it because readers went there because they wanted long form content and there was a presumption of some kind of monetary transaction because it's very easy on the platform. I think the whole point of the platform is to shift over to where you have paid subscribers. And then so people have that expectation to begin with. So for a while, it was a good place for a writer to build a following and possibly get into neo patronage and stuff. From what I can tell right now, it's not such a great, it's kind of becoming, they're trying to turn it into another Twitter.
yeah,
So I wish I'd gotten on it sooner. I wish I'd heard about it sooner.
well, they're trying to turn it into another Twitter, and they're also trying to turn it into another like podcast hosting
Yeah, you're right.
platform as well,
Yeah.
which isn't bad. I mean, I suppose it's great if you're already on Substack and you like have a newsletter. I suppose it is really convenient to have like a one-stop shop for everything. But I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you, it's really hard. Like for me personally, I spent like 15 years building a following on Twitter. So now it's really hard for me to ask, a lot of people to go over to this other platform, for my newsletter. So
Yeah, I
I think
understand
people
that too.
I think people are getting platform fatigue you
Yeah.
know, from just jumping on multiple things. So
Speaking of which, I'm sure you've heard advice, as I have for the last few years of build your own platform. And even before people started saying that, this was something I wanted to do, but I didn't have the money. I didn't have the time. I kept putting it off. I was busy with other stuff. But I can say now that I have built my own platform. So I have a online store as part of my website where people can go there and buy my ebooks directly from me. I'm not a drop shipper yet. I mean, I'm going to have to see if this succeeds before I get to the point where I can sell publish on demand paperbacks or something. It's a start. And so I've gotten there. And if anybody wants to visit it, it's virtualpulppress.com.
yeah, that's cool. So yeah, talk about that a little bit too. So I mean, obviously, I can kind of understand what the impetus for that would be, but I mean,
Yeah.
what was the process like that for you?
Boy. So actually, can I share my screen?
Yeah, yeah,
I'll show the
yeah,
site while I'm talking about it.
yeah, absolutely.
If I can figure out how this works.
There should be a screen
Yeah, well, okay. Obviously, I picked. So when I clicked on, I got two options: screen or presentation.
screen.
Okay. Oh, good. And now it gives me a choice of what I can show. All right. So let me show this. So this is my website. I'll start at the top. Um, And then I've got my Paradox series here. You can go straight there, and that's my time travel conspiracy thriller sports adventure
Yeah,
series. And then, of course, here's Threat Quotient, which is the first book in the first graphic novel in Tales of the Earthbound, the series that I have swimming around in my brain. Here's my
yeah.
Retread series. So here's my, and of course, you can click on this and go there and look at all the books. And I have it set up so that it's similar to Amazon, where you can read a blurb, you can buy it there. And now I'm in the process currently of putting in chapter excerpts and stuff. And then, of course, down here, there's a carousel with all the books so far. Now, there are a couple of the shorter ones that I have not yet put the EPUB and the PDF in, but I'm working on it. And then down here, there's going to be, hopefully within the next few days, there's going to be a window into my blog. So you'll get the latest 4 blog posts.
Cool.
Now, the process was, of course, I strategized and I envisioned this for a long time about how I would do it when I do it. And finally, I went and hired a I guess you'd call him a webmaster. That's what some people call him.
Yeah. That's also one of the things I do. So
Well, you do that. Okay.
yeah, I don't do the hosting, but I've done web design for people. So yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so that's the long and short of it. I told them what I wanted, and the first person I got was a not the best, but so I had to eat the cost of that. But I went back and got a guy who did this for me, and I really liked the way it came out. Oh, also I forgot, you can go to view all books and just see them all there. And
Nice.
yeah, I envision someday having, now there's me and 2 other names, but I have another guy who's wanting to put his books on there, and eventually maybe I'll get a bunch of people, a bunch of writers in my stable, so to speak, to do this. But while I'm here, let me before I forget, let's look at you can actually I have most of Threat Quotient. I formatted it for vertical scroll and put it here where you can look at it for free as well.
Nice.
Yeah. And so, we can look at some of these as I talk, and okay. I thought I was signed in, but never mind. But actually, if we go, you can scroll through this way and see the different episodes here. So this was another thing I did that was very time consuming and a pain, but I understood there's a lot of people who like to read comics on their phone. And so that's why I formatted it for vertical scroll. So I had to go through and separate all the panels on the pages, and put them, in that format so people could look at it on their phone and hopefully, decide whether this was, something they wanted to do or not. Same thing over here. But actually, while I'm sharing my screen, I should probably go. Can you see this Kickstarter page?
Not yet. I think if you want to,
Maybe I have to go back and change what I'm sharing
yeah.
in the program. Okay, so let me stop that and try this.
Your site is really cool looking though.
Thank
So.
you. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks.
Okay, yeah, I can see
You
that.
see it now? Okay.
Yeah, I can see the Kickstarter.
So this is the pre-launch page. It doesn't have the video embedded, or that it's not exactly the same as it's going to be, tomorrow when it goes live. But it does give you a chance to see what the pages originally look like with all the panels compiled the way the artists did them and the way I colored them. So I think every time I see them, in the page layout the way it was intended to be, I just like it better than separated panel by panel for vertical scroll.
Yeah.
I think it looks much better. But And I did put this, I have 3 of these. I made my own little comic strips, I guess you'd call them, that are kind of like, I used some panels from the story and I had some made specially for them to introduce you to the characters. But so you can look at that too. Anybody who goes to the page.
Yeah, I mean, you seem to have everything really put well together on the Kickstarter too. So is your content still so are your books still available on Amazon then, or are you moving them all over exclusive?
No, they're still on Amazon, but I kind of see the writing on the wall at Amazon.
Yeah.
For instance, I found this by accident that I had over 11,000 followers on Amazon, which, as I told you before, I was too ignorant and I didn't work hard enough at building an email list over the course of my career. And that hurt me. Although email lists are not as effective as they used to be, apparently.
Yeah.
But so Amazon was a place where I wanted to build a following, and I did. Apparently, over 11,000 people followed me there. But I would swear to you, well, maybe not swear, but I would bet money that Amazon has not sent one single alert to those people when I come out with a new book. And large, probably for political reasons. There's other evidence I could, compile and tell you about that would bore you to tears that would
Sure.
give you an idea why I believe that. But so they already don't like me. They haven't outright banned me yet. And maybe they won't. Maybe they've got their algorithms fine tuned to the point where they don't have to overtly do that to anybody anymore. But also with the inundation of limitless slop, whether human slop or AI generated slop, it doesn't matter. It's burying everything else. So that if you're not already established as a big name, it's almost impossible for readers to find your work by accident or coincidence.
Yeah, that's something that's been hard for me. I hate to say I've only been in like self-publishing for 3.5 years, because to me that's not like a super long time, but it's not like it's not like I'm the new kid on the block anymore.
You're not a rookie.
And even so, it's been really hard to, just get unless I share the link directly to people, most people don't find me just, wandering on Amazon or something, or very few of them. On occasion, I'll get tweets or emails being like, "Hey, I found your, author page on, on Amazon," but not as much as I used to. So
yeah, so I noticed. I think it was about 2019. Up to that point, I'd been building momentum on Amazon, and I wasn't there yet, but I was getting closer to the possibility of quitting my day job and doing this for a living. And then something happened, and it might have been Kindle Unlimited, I forget what, but something happened and the floor just dropped out from underneath me. And the annual income I was making with my books just plummeted.
I've heard similar stories from other authors. I can't really attest to any of that personally, because I started, my first book was published in 2023.
Okay.
But even with me, my first couple books did really well. American Inferno, my latest book here, has also done really well as well. But that's because I've been pushing it I've been driving people, to purchase it personally. Whereas if it weren't for people sharing around, I don't think it would be getting traction at all.
You're right. Well, it's getting so bad, and it's been this way for a couple years, that I know some other writers who you can actually enter their name and the title of their book specifically in Amazon's search bar. And that's the only way you can find their stuff. And then when you get there, there's their book, the one that you search for specifically, it's still not going to be at the top of the list of results that they give you. So, and I think I'm almost there at this point. So it's, like I said, I can see the writing on the wall. I don't think Amazon is going to be a viable platform for very long. It certainly should not be the only one that you have. You should not be putting your eggs all in one basket at this point.
No, it's really tough not to though. Like with Kindle Unlimited, I know that digitally with Kindle Unlimited, you're kind of like contractually, like you have to make your ebook exclusive to them if you're going to be with Kindle Unlimited.
Right.
However, if the flora continues to kind of drop, what I'll probably do is I'll probably just take my books off of Kindle Unlimited, still allow people to buy them, but just opt out of the unlimited thing and then put them on my own site or elsewhere. Because I mean, it seems like I'm kind of losing ebook money by not having it on other platforms like Apple or wherever else you can distribute ebooks on now. So
so I'm not ready to quit Amazon altogether. I'm still getting a trickle of sales.
Well,
nothing like I used to.
And like it or not, is the best place still where you can find visibility, where people can find you visibility.
Yeah, especially if you get put on somebody's also bought list.
Yeah, which
that still could pay dividends.
Yeah, which has been helpful for me, but also like if people just search my name, my Amazon page is usually the first one to come up for people. Either that or the Whitfield Report Spotify page. One of those two things. So
I'm going to try that now to test that.
Yeah, I would be curious about that. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like the algorithms change so much too. And I mean, I know people have like mixed feelings about AI. I personally like it because I've figured out a way to integrate into my workflow.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, ironically, that I've done is I use it to help generate keywords so that like the algorithm will, will put me back into it because, right? How do you my logic is this. How do you talk to a robot? Like through another robot, I guess.
Yeah. Well, see, I do see it as it's a tool, right?
Yeah. That's exactly how I see it.
I don't plan to ever have it write my books for me. But I did, for instance, when Grok was still free and you got so much usage every day, I used it to animate panels from my comic. And that's what I used to make my trailers with. So, that was a lot more work than most people would guess too, because you get about 20 different 5-second animations before you find one you can use on average.
Yeah.
Because of the hallucinations, and it ignores your instructions. And it's like working with some of these human artists I've tried working with. It's extremely frustrating. But yeah, so I can see using it as a tool, and I'm going to try to do that more and more. I'm going to try to remember to use it for keywords and SEO, and maybe even see how it does writing blurbs. I'm not real impressed with it so far, but I might be using the wrong one or something.
I've used both ChatGPT and Grok to, I wouldn't say really write my things, but more like publish my, not publish, but I guess polish my writing and my drafts. And
well, see, now I'm thinking about that, because as good as of an editor as I am, you're never as good at editing your own stuff as you are editing others.
Right.
And even some stuff I've gone through and I've had proofreaders go through and thought it was good. Something causes me to go read a passage of it again, and I find out there's a homonym or something that I missed, or I put an apostrophe where it wasn't, or I did not put an apostrophe where I should. And so, maybe I can use AI to go through and polish like that. But of
Yeah.
course, now there's this crazy inversion of reality where now if your prose is polished, then people assume it's from AI. It's not
Yeah,
realistic. It doesn't have that human touch or something if you don't have enough mistakes in it.
that's actually a problem that they've run into now, because like colleges, I guess they're using, these AI detectors to try and detect, AI for students plagiarizing. But
Mm-hmm.
now what they've found too is, even if someone doesn't use AI at all, that those AI detectors will still flag your writing. And I guess the reason being is the AI writes similar to how you're taught to write now in schools too. So it's kind of like one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't
Yeah,
things.
that's what it
So
seems like. But I always try to do stuff right. And it's like I'm compelled to do it. I'm compelled to put titles of books and titles of movies in italics and
yeah,
all the stuff that they used to teach in English classes. I still do that, and I don't care if somebody thinks I'm AI. I challenge anyone to find an AI that writes like I do, or
right.
another
Well,
human being that does, for that matter.
yeah. Well, and I mean, the other thing is like I'm open about how I use AI. I like I said, I don't use it necessarily to tell the story, just to polish it. I think if people don't at least try it, or at least play around with some of these things, people are going to get left behind. So,
Yeah. Well,
to
these authors who are using it, some of them are incredibly prolific right now. They're just popping out books like nobody's business.
yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's, as far as like organizing my ideas, it's helped me like put out like 3 books, a year or something. Granted,
Good Lord, Sam. See, I can't compete with you either.
like two of them are like shorter novellas.
Huh?
So, but then I'll have like one big one.
Hmm.
But yeah, I have like one of those brains where I'm always thinking of ideas though too.
Well, me too,
So
but that's stifled for most of the day because I'm doing my day job and I can't put the ideas
yeah,
down.
yeah, that is one advantage of working from home, I guess.
You work from home. See, I need to get there. I need to do that.
Yeah. So that definitely helps, but it also has its downsides to a certain extent too.
Not as much exercise or sunlight, I guess.
Mainly kind of just being tied to a computer somewhat more than I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, see, that's the advantage you have is like you can do more marketing and all the crap that comes with the writing career these days.
yeah,
If you're in front of you have access to your computer all the time. So I could
yeah,
see, like, if I get to the point where I'm able to retire or, God willing, be able to support myself through sales, then I would probably have to intentionally take breaks and force myself to take breaks and get out and get some exercise and some fresh air.
that is that is one thing that I do have to do, is kind
Yeah,
of for and being in Florida, it's not that bad depending on what time of year.
right.
Now, in wintertime it's great, but in the summer it's kind of like you want to get out early and not, or super late.
For quite a while, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even on
So,
the days when it's like 30 degrees in the morning and that humidity feels like your bones are snapping, by the afternoon it's hot again, or pleasantly warm, I guess, in the wintertime.
yeah. Although we had a really cold January, surprisingly. We had like one of those cold fronts come down from Canada, and luckily I still had like a lot of, you know, jackets and whatnot from when I was in Colorado.
Yeah, that's what the people who are acclimatized to Florida, like it gets down to 60 degrees and they start putting on snowsuits and stuff. It's really comical when you first move there.
Yeah, yeah. And when I first moved here, I was like, I was like, what are people doing? And it's like, and now after being here for 13 years, it's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
So
Your blood thinned out.
yeah. So, but anyway, so you've got the Kickstarter going on. Any other books in your pulp series going at all, or are you just mainly focused on the comic for right now?
Yeah, I have. So again, this thing has been so time consuming. I haven't had a chance to work on anything since I published the Paradox series, which by the way is pretty recent. And I could tell you some stories about it. But I do have ideas. There's a science fiction, like a space opera. I've been thinking about now, and I'm thinking about maybe possibly. I've been hearing a lot about Royal Road, and I've been thinking maybe I should try that, and I should, rather than spending all the attention to detail and all the characterization and world building like I've done up to this point. It seems like the new generation of readers just want, action, action, action. Give me the meat and potatoes and nothing else, which I think might be why lit RPG is so popular. Anyway, so I've been thinking about maybe making this series and like trimming all the traditional literary membrane that you put around an action or adventure story and releasing it episodically on Royal Road or some platform like that, and see if I
Yeah.
see how I do with that.
Yeah, I've thought of doing something similar, just doing like one-off stories. The thing with that though is like, again, will people come?
Yeah.
And also the way my brain works, I'm like, oh, this could, turn into like a whole universe or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not even going to fight that because I know it's going to happen. And
So
the idea I'm thinking of is got potential for a lot of mileage. But, if my luck adheres to the pattern it has so far, when I finally do get on Royal Road, it'll be, a worthless platform that's
well, yeah,
not good for building a crowd audience.
you and I are kind of unfortunately, in the same boat with that sort of things.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm not really one to early adapt anymore since so many, platforms kind of fall off before they begin. So
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Threat Quotient is just the first graphic novel in a series I call Tales of the Earthbound that I have planned, which is going to be at least 4 or maybe 5 different books in the series. And then after that, I don't know. It all depends on how successful I am. I would like to build a comic universe, which I'm introducing with this, and eventually get to the point where I could have, spin-offs and solo titles of some of the characters I'm introducing and like do little mini series with them and so forth. I don't know if I'll ever get to, it was a dream when I was a kid to be the next Stan Lee and have like a stable of writers and artists working for me. And I don't know if I'll ever get to that. I don't know if I want to, frankly, because I don't know if anybody would share the vision that I have and be as dedicated to it as I am. But I'd like to get to the point where I could do that. And if I do, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do this space opera that I'm thinking about.
Well, if you ever did get to that point, I would join in your publication or
Awesome,
whatever.
My first recruit.
Yeah.
No, actually, I have an artist who's interested in working with me. Maybe not necessarily being part of my stable, but interested in working with me anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would certainly be interested in, joining a stable. Thing is, it's tough to find like other, people kind of in the community.
Yeah.
And it's not even so much a thing of like, I know there are people out there. It's just, tracking everyone down.
It's finding each other, really, which should be easy in this age of the internet, but it's finding others. And then also writers it is kind of, in a way, it should not be, because we can have friendly competition. It's not like if somebody buys your friend's book, they're going to stop reading anything else. It's not
Right.
like they're never going to buy your books again. We should not be afraid of competition, but writers are really busy. We're busy doing our own stuff, and we don't have time to read like we did before. At least I don't,
Yeah.
as prolifically as I once did. And also, like, when you get consumed with the business, with the hustle and everything, we become kind of selfish. And that makes us less willing to work together on stuff, especially Generation X, because we're kind of loners to begin with. We're
Right.
used to surviving out there on our own.
Yeah.
Where millennials are more collegial, you tend to be better about teamwork and stuff like that. You have some advantages that we don't. So these things all play a part, but still, that said, I would love to get to the point where I had a stable of other, well, maybe not a bullpen for comics, but it would be great if we could all cooperate to the point where we like linked our websites together or something, and we had some central clearinghouse, or what would you call aggregation, where
Yeah.
like readers could find all of our stuff and like browse all of our sites and picked out what they like.
Yeah, there used to be, I used to be part of one of those, like for like a couple podcasts, and then like the webmaster, I don't know if he died or he or just got busy or whatever, but he quit doing it, so the domain just expired
That's a shame.
or whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where, again, the internet is changing, so it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's where do we go to next?
Yeah, and I've wondered about, if we could go back to like the old web rings or so. I don't know, that's probably before your time, but or at least like everybody, put links to each other's author site on a sidebar or a blog
Yeah.
roll or something. Because again, it's not a zero-sum game. Just because they buy your books doesn't mean they're not going to buy mine. In fact, it might whet their appetite, so they want to buy more books from different authors as well. I don't
Yeah,
have
I mean,
one single author that I only read from them. Like on my shelves, I got all kinds of different authors, and I get in different moods. I get on different kicks, and sometimes I'm in the mood to read one guy's stuff and sometimes another. So I'm sure I'm not the only reader who's like that.
yeah, it's funny you mention that, because the last time I had you on the podcast, which I want to say was last year, but it might have actually been 24. But after I had you on, I got a message from a few people saying that they picked up your military pulp books,
Nice.
from having on the podcast. So yeah, kind of doing the podcast, networking thing does tend to help. I've noticed. So
Well, that's awesome. I hope it works again.
yeah, I hope so too. Ironically, like I have the issue where I'm great at hosting other people on my podcast, but then I'm terrible at going on other podcasts to promote my own stuff. So
Okay.
that's a thing too.
You're more comfortable running your own show. That kind of makes sense.
No, it's not. It's not even so much that. It's that like everyone's busy, and I don't want to. I don't want to impose on other people, or they live in what or they live in like different, or they live in like really strange time zones or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I have a couple people from Europe who want to have me on their show, but it's like,
Nice.
they're like plus like 6 hours, so it's like
Yeah. Yeah. I've had to deal with that too, because I went on somebody's podcast who they live in France right now, and yeah, getting our schedules to mesh was a challenge. Yeah. So
yeah, someone bought my books in Norway or something, and I'm flattered that my books have gone that far, but it's also like, yeah, if, I'm not really sure what the time difference is in Belgium, so that's going to be like, that's going to be hard to coordinate that.
yeah, I've run into that too. Like different countries, like the Netherlands one time, and South
Yeah.
Africa. that guy, the South African, and I actually were social media pals for a while, and it was him, partially him, who convinced me to write the sequel to my debut novel.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, there seems to be a lot of the there seems to be an audience for like a lot of the old school like Western stuff in Europe. I've noticed too, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Have you ever heard of
So
the Piccadilly Cowboys?
I don't. I think I've heard of them, but I don't really know what that is.
Yeah, I know of them. I don't know. I'm not well versed in it or anything, but it was a group of uh, Western authors who were British. They lived in Britain, and apparently they were quite successful during I think maybe the 70s, 60s, and 70s, maybe.
Yeah, that would make that.
Yeah, but yeah, there's so these genres that we think of as American, they're they're popular elsewhere as well. I mean, well, going back to comic books, look at Americans invented the comic book. Unless you want to listen to those guys that think the Bayeux Tapestry was the first comic. And now, look, the Japanese are doing it, the French are doing it, the Spanish have been doing it for quite a while. It's
Yeah,
it's worldwide now.
yeah, it's
Yeah. And you probably have a lot of contacts from the men's adventure fiction Discord, I would imagine.
yeah, I still have I still do have contacts. That community, it's still active, not as much though, just because again, everyone's kind of busy with, life and
Yeah.
whatnot. But
I had to cut way back on it until I'm not even really lurking there on the regular anymore. It kind of got overwhelming. There's so many people on there and so many
yeah,
different threads going on that I couldn't keep track of, which is unfortunate. I'm really glad there's a community for us, but I just don't have time to pull my own weight there anymore.
no, I hear you. I talk to like 4 or 5 people consistently, and you're one of them.
Okay.
I was I got to the point where I was spending more time in there talking about writing than I actually was
Yeah.
writing. So yeah, I kind of had to cut back. But
That's a
yeah, I mean
pitfall of that. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean it's a great group, and I definitely send people there as well. When I can.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, it must be getting late where you're at too. So anything else you want to promote or uh,
Well, that's a big one. Your audience saw my website, so I encourage you to go there.
yeah,
If you already do e-commerce somewhere else, you might not even have to enter your information anew there. So I recommend you check out my books there or on Amazon if you want. If you look up virtual pulp and put it in quotes, you'll see at least a few of my books will pop up on that search in Amazon. The easiest way is to go to my website, and then Threat Quotient, which the Kickstarter starts tomorrow. So it would make me incredibly happy if you watch this show and go back my Kickstarter. And I'm really hoping it's successful, and I'll be able to put a book in your hands in a reasonable amount of time.
yeah, I would love to back it, and I will definitely include the link in the episode description and in the video description for those watching on YouTube as well.
Awesome. If you want, I can also send you links for the trailers. And if there's one of them that you feel like sharing, that's cool too.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I always try and share out the work of people who have been on the show pretty consistently. So,
I appreciate that
uh,
too.
so well, happy to have you on, and good luck with the Kickstarter. So, really appreciate it, Henry.
Thank you, Sam. And thanks again. I really appreciate you having me on the show and letting me talk.
Oh, no problem. Where can people find you on social media if they want to get in touch with you?
Okay. I am on the social media I spend the most time on is Substack. So if you can look me up by my handle, which is Machine Trooper, one word on Substack, or you can, let's see, it's Substack, hankbrown.substack.com, I think, if you want the actual address. And then I also have the same handle on Twitter, so I check in there occasionally. I'm on Gab as well, but Gab's pretty much like a ghost town now.
Yeah.
So I don't hang out there much. I think that I have started a Pinterest, and I'm not as posting as consistently as I should. But you can, dang it, I think it's either, oh, and TikTok. TikTok on VPP or Virtual Pulp Press there. So you can
Yeah.
see stuff that I posted on all of those platforms.
Yeah, well, I'll be sure. I mean, I know I already follow you on a bunch of them. I just got on to TikTok now. Now that it's American.
Yeah.
So I'll follow you there as well. But yeah, I'll have all your links in the description and all your socials. So again, thanks for going on, man, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure.
Alrighty. Folks, we appreciate you for coming on and watching and or listening. So we'll have the links to Henry's work and everything else in the description. Feel free to give him a follow, and of course back his Patreon as well. So, and Kickstarter. Take care, and we'll see you on the next episode.
See y'all.
The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Thank you for watching the Whitfield Report live on the Right to Offend Media Network. Make sure to check out Sam's books on Amazon, Audible, and Kindle. You can follow Sam on X at SamW_NGC and the Right to Offend Media Network at RTO Media. Like, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. And until next time, God bless, God save this great nation. God, freedom, legacy, in that order.